Welcome back. Only time will tell whether the rapid game I'm about to show you is a turning point in my rapid journey, in other words, I'll be headed back up in the ratings, or whether it's just an aberration in my continued stream of losses. But the game review says I did pretty well. When I read the review right after playing it on the app last night, it said I had 0 inaccuracies, 0 mistakes, 0 blunders, and 0 misses. And the game review here on the browser running with a higher strength agrees. It says I played with 88% accuracy, and down here the ratings estimator says I played like a 1650, so I'm pretty happy with that. I even had one brilliant move, but according to this graph, it looks like the brilliant move was after I was well ahead. And right here we were even up until about a certain point, and then my opponent made 2 or 3 mistakes and or blunders that gave me the lead. So we're just going to go up to that spot, and maybe I'll go ahead and go through the rest of the game. But I did switch things up here. Instead of playing the Vienna, which is what I've been trying to play since I switched to e4, having not had very much luck with the Vienna, I switched to playing knight to f3 as my second move after e4, e5. So after e4, e5, I did play knight to f3, which is the king's pawn opening, king's knight opening. It can, of course, morph into the Italian game, the Ruy Lopez, etc., depending on what my opponent plays. Now, my opponent played knight to c6, and I wasn't sure I was ready to play the Ruy Lopez or the Italian game, so I just went ahead and played knight to c3. So it turns out I could have just played the Vienna from the beginning and then played knight to f3 as my third move. So we did get the 3 knights opening at this point. My opponent brought out their bishop, which I think invites the Italian game. I can play bishop to c4. Stockfish says taking this pawn is my best move. And I think I've heard that somewhere before, but I don't understand it because it looks like they would just get a knight for the pawn. Okay, but then I would play d4, which is a fork of those 2 pieces. Okay, and then they would drop their bishop back at that point, and I would take the knight here. But then wouldn't I end up with doubled pawns? Also, I know Stockfish is notoriously bad in the first few moves out of the gate. As long as you don't make a huge blunder like giving away a piece or something in the opening, Stockfish's suggestions may or may not be perfect. But I'm not confident that if I tried that I would end up getting the right thing out of it. But what I did do was play my bishop out to b5, which is kind of like the Ruy Lopez if I hadn't already got this knight out and they hadn't already gotten this bishop out. The engine says that takes us to even. My opponent immediately played a6, and I don't think I've been in this exact position before, ever. I have played the Ruy Lopez in the past just for fun, but again, those 2 pieces weren't out there. And I think here what you're supposed to do in the Ruy Lopez is drop this back, and then if they play the other pawn, then you drop it back again, so it's aiming down there at f7. But here I wasn't sure if that's what I'm supposed to do because, again, it's not the Ruy Lopez. It is just a variation of the 3 knights opening. But I did drop it back. Stockfish says it'd be slightly better if I took the knight here, but I dropped back to a4, and it's okay. And I didn't know if they were going to play b5 or not, following out a strange, broken version of the Ruy Lopez, but they did. Well, of course, then I have to go to b3 with my bishop, so I did, aiming at f7. So again, it's like the Ruy Lopez as if we had played these 2 pieces after those first few moves. My opponent got their knight out, which is one of their best few moves. And now again, I'm supposed to play a knight in here. No, not that one. This time I'm supposed to play knight to d5. Okay, Stockfish has changed its mind now. I'm supposed to castle. Well, castling is what I did because to me, in my mind, that's the whole reason for getting those 2 pieces out. Again, I'm not trying to follow specific openings. I haven't studied the 3 knights opening. What I'm trying to do with both d4 before I switched and e4 after I switched is follow basic opening principles, put a pawn in the center to occupy and or control or contest some of those center squares, develop some pieces that also control center squares, well, not that one, and then castle, get the king to safety. And so that's what I did. Again, not knowing whether or not this was an opening specifically, but I did castle because that's what I had planned to do, and of course at some point I want to move my d-pawn so I can get out this dark squared bishop. And here the game review says my opponent's next move is an inaccuracy. What they should probably do is castle also, or go ahead and put this bishop here and we'll still be very close to even, or even d6. I guess they could complete a very small pawn chain there, but they played d5. Now I don't know if that was a misclick, mouse slip, whatever you want to call it, or if they were seriously contesting this, because that pawn is protected a few different ways, protected by their queen and their knight. I think they might have miscalculated because I have multiple pieces attacking that square. I have 3 pieces attacking that square, and they only have 2 pieces defending it. Perhaps they were looking at this square and saw that they had 2 pieces attacking this square, and I only had 1 defending there, but forgot that I could attack it before it got to e4. That might have been what went wrong, but anyway, it's not a grievous mistake on their part. I am supposed to take with my knight, which I did, and they're not supposed to take back. Here, according to the engine, they're just supposed to go ahead and get their other bishop out, and then I'll take this knight, and which they would take back with their queen, I suppose, but instead they took my knight with their knight. Stockfish says it doesn't matter that much whether I take back with my bishop or my pawn. The reason I chose to take back with my bishop is because not only does it continue to point at f7 from there, but it's also threatening this undefended knight, which, if I am able to get it, would be a fork of their king and their rook. So I assume at that point that they would move their knight. I thought they were going to move it back there. So I took their knight, which was my best move according to the engine, and here they're supposed to defend that knight. They can defend it in a couple of different ways. They can defend it by playing queen to d6, which defends it there. They can defend it by playing queen to d7, which defends it that way, or bishop to d7 here, which defends it that way. I'm not sure why bishop to b7 isn't one of the options, but those are their three best moves. Now, I'm only a pawn ahead here, so I'm not sure exactly why there's a plus 1.4 evaluation, but my opponent didn't defend the knight. They brought that bishop out to challenge my bishop, I guess thinking that I might trade here? Even if I did trade there, I don't think it would be bad for them. I mean, I don't think it would be bad for me. And Stockfish agrees. It says if I took that bishop, they would take back with that pawn, so they would have doubled pawns there, and I would still be a pawn ahead. And the one pawn that would be missing for them would be the one in front of their king, which I can maybe get down to before too long. But the problem with that, of course, is that it undefends the knight, so I just went up a piece right here on move 10. And it says plus 4.5. Their best move is bishop to d7, which they did, which is to block the check. And of course, I'm going to get the rook. I assume that's my best move. It is. And of course, they take back with their queen. Now, the only thing here that I was worried about is that because of where their queen is, because of where their bishop is, and because of where their other bishop is, those are all pointed down at my king, which can't go anywhere. Now, of course, at this moment, my king is safe. This f-pawn is protected by my rook. That square is protected by this pawn. This pawn isn't protected, though. But come to think of it, neither is their e-pawn, and Stockfish says I should just go ahead and take their e-pawn. And they're not going to take this for some reason. That's interesting. I wonder why they wouldn't take this now. Maybe it's because the center is open and they should get out of the way. But what I saw was that they could take my e-pawn, so I defended it with this, which also has the purpose of getting out my dark squared bishop, which I need to get out at some point. Now my opponent castled, which wasn't one of their best moves for some reason. And again, I'm supposed to take this pawn. I think it's because I'm not used to e4 openings, e4, e5 openings, that like a lot of beginners, brand new comers to chess, say in the Petrov where the two knights are sitting on f6 and f3, neither player sees that the knights can take each other's pawns. That might have been the case here, that I'm just not having the correct vision because I'm used to the other pawn being further forward. That might be part of the problem here. But yeah, I don't remember seeing e5 at all. The engine says a4 is my next best move, and bishop to e3 is fine here. I guess since I'm a piece ahead with the knight and I'm up in exchange, the bishop for the rook, I guess it would make sense to offer a trade here. And it says that they would try to get out if I played bishop to e3. They would drop that one back. If they did trade, it would mess up my pawn structure a little bit. But because I'm up a piece and an exchange and a pawn, I think, that would just be getting out of the way of this rook. It would help connect my rooks because I got rid of that dark squared bishop. And then I would just be up on my opponent. But I don't understand a4. What I did was play a3, thinking that that would help slow down this dark squared bishop in a moment. Maybe I could play b4. And the engine says that wasn't too bad. I'm still up +4. My opponent didn't play one of their better moves. They threw that forward. And again, I'm supposed to take this pawn in the middle. But I already had my board vision set over there in that corner. And that is a downside of being a beginner who hasn't fully trained themselves yet. But I will say that it wasn't just a one-move threat on the bishop. I had an idea before I moved either one of these pawns that I wanted to be able to put my queen here to help get it out into the action. I'm not sure, maybe there or something like that. But before I did that, I wanted to get these pawns out of the way. And I didn't want to just throw this pawn forward. So that's why I moved this one first and then this one. And then my idea was to push my c-pawn to c3 so I could put my queen there on b3 aiming at their king. This was kind of a long-term plan. Here I wasn't sure. I thought if they took me, I could take back and I would be okay. But I am supposed to take their e-pawn again or take their f-pawn, and either way I'll be okay, according to the engine, or still bishop to e3. But I played this, which leaves us above +4. My opponent's supposed to drop their bishop back this way, but I think they wanted to keep pointing it at my king, which is why they dropped it back that way. And I still didn't see that e-pawn. I got my bishop out here. Maybe I did see the e-pawn because I pointed my bishop at it. And that's why they were supposed to put their bishop on d6, is to defend that e-pawn. Okay, well now they're supposed to take here or play queen to e8 to get behind this pawn. I'm not sure why they would put their queen there because I'm threatening it with two pieces. Now clearly I haven't been seeing that my knight could take there, but I don't know what their queen on e8 would do, or bishop to e6. I'm not sure what that would do either. I don't understand any of their moves, and apparently well, no, the only one of theirs I do understand is taking here with this pawn, which would open the file for their rook, and I guess make a vulnerability here, because then they would have some sort of discovery on my queen because my d-pawn would be missing, maybe. But they played f4, which wasn't good, because again, I can take their e-pawn. Interestingly, Stockfish says c4 is my best move. h3 is next. Oh, because maybe they were thinking about bringing their bishop in here, which is why they played f4. Or again, knight taking the e-pawn. But I took the e-pawn with the bishop, which it says is excellent. But it wasn't one of my top 3 moves. And again, they're supposed to play, no, not queen. Yeah, queen to e8 again. Okay, I still don't understand that one. Yeah, I'm not sure what queen to e8 does. I do see bishop to g4, which is one of the things Stockfish suggests. Bishop to e6. Not sure what that does either. My opponent played queen to d8, which I can't explain their reasoning for that. And back when I told you about my plan with my pawns to push that to c3 and move my queen over here, I went ahead and did that. This time it actually does turn out to be one of my top 3 moves, my 3rd best move to play c3. Now they did play bishop to c4. Well, I thought to myself, what's a good way to get this queen out of that pin without ending up damaging my pawn structure? Well, of course, the plan that I was going for all along. So I did check from b3, which basically forces the king over. I suppose they could have blocked with their rook. Their 3rd best move is to block with the bishop, which of course I would just capture with my queen, so it's not very good. They played their best move, which was to move the king over, but now since my queen's not pinned anymore, I can move that knight. It's not actually one of my best moves, according to the engine, but I moved it. I figured it's protected 2 ways here, even though they have 2 pieces pointed at it, the knight is going to be fine, and that blocks their bishop from pointed down here at my queen. Their best move is to bring their queen over here, I suppose in a desperation attempt at attacking my castled king. Instead, they did that. And here's where I played my brilliant move in this game. Now, you can see from my clock I have 8 minutes and 30 seconds left. That means that after 19 moves, I haven't spent a lot of time with each move. My opponent's been taking a little bit more time, but not too much. But here I took 24 seconds. Now, of course, I had several ideas. I could take the bishop, which Stockfish says would be okay. Of course, if I did, they would come check. And then I would have to move my king to the corner, and then my opponent would have, if not the lead, they would at least have the momentum on their side, which I guess is what they were hoping for, which seems like the whole plan of putting this here. I think possibly another plan for putting it here would be just in case I didn't take, then they could put their queen here and they would be threatening mate. Of course, at that point, I could push my g-pawn forward, let them have this exchange since I'm up already 7 points of material. But I did see that I was up 7 points of material, and I thought I could give up a bishop for this pawn. Also, because my queen is still cutting off g8, they would have no other choice but to take that. And when they took it, I have a knight that could hop in right here. Now that's not quite the perfect awesome fork that it looks like, hitting all 3 of those squares, because their bishop could of course take it. But I don't like where their bishop is down here, and I want to take it without messing up my pawn structure. So that's what I thought. I thought in my 24 seconds, I thought if I take here and they take back because they have to, then I check with my knight, they'll take it with their bishop, and then I'll take with my queen. And it would have gone down a couple of points of material there, but I would have gotten rid of this bishop down here and cleared out the center a little bit. And I would have a queen and 2 rooks, or their queen, rook, and a bishop, and a couple extra pawns on my side. That does turn out to be the best move, and the game review called it brilliant, so I feel pretty good about that. So they did take it because that was forced, and now Stockfish says I'm supposed to take this bishop. I'm not sure why it's better to take this bishop now, because then they would still have this, and I've just given up that bishop. See, I don't understand that at all. And it says if I took here, they wouldn't actually check on g5. I guess that's because I would be threatening the fork whether they checked on g5 or not. And once they did check with their queen on g5 and I moved my king out, then the momentum would be on my side because they would have to move their queen out of the fork and their bishop isn't guarding that square anymore, I think. But that is my 3rd best move, which is what I played. Of course, they are supposed to take it back with their bishop, and they didn't. So I took their queen. And I'll just run through the rest of the moves of this game. For those of you who are curious, of course, as always, the URL to the game, the link will be in the description. We played some fairly logical moves up to this point. I had to play pretty carefully down here, even though Stockfish says I have mate in 11 2 different ways. Well, now it says mate in 7. I still have to be careful because there's a bishop pointed here. They have a chance of checking, but I calculated that if they did check here, I could take their bishop, or I could take the rook. For that matter, and if they took back, then I could take the bishop. Because I'm up 13 points of material now since they made the mistake with their queen, and you saw that they didn't take back when I did that. So one of my best moves is to check with the knight, which is what I did. Because if they took with the rook, of course I would get it with my queen, but my opponent played their best move, which is to move their king out. My best move now is to check with my rook on the back rank, which I did, They played their second best move, which is going that way. Now I'm supposed to play knight to e5 here, which I did consider, but instead I played over here because it looked like a fork of those two pieces. Also, moving the knight out of the way allows my rook and my queen to point down there at g8, which is right next to the king. So that's what I played. My opponent's supposed to play bishop to g4. Let me back up. I just realized why knight to e5 was better, because that actually does get out of the way of both my queen and my rook pointed down to g8. But this blocks my rook from seeing down there. But I figured I was going to get rid of my knight in just a second by taking one of those two pieces. What my opponent did was not one of their best moves. They took this pawn here, because now my rook's not defending it anymore. But of course that still allows me to take their bishop, which I did. That's actually their best move, going back. But it allows me to take their h7 pawn with check, which is a fork, and I have mate in 5 or mate in 3, depending on which of the two legal moves my opponent chooses. But with 2 minutes left on the clock, down 16 points of material, they resigned. So I do feel pretty good about that. And again, it comes back to about right here on move 7, where my opponent played the inaccuracy of putting that pawn forward, and I played the best sequence by accident. Not knowing exactly what was best here, I did play the best sequence, but they weren't supposed to take back. And I was supposed to take back with my bishop, and they were supposed to defend that knight, but they didn't. So that little sequence there, starting with their d5 push, and an inaccuracy, and then a blunder. And after that, it was just me being careful and trying not to mess up and hang something of my own. And it turns out that I did play my best move quite a few times going through with the engine, so pretty happy with that. I do have my fingers crossed that this is a change in direction for my rapid rating. I would like to get back up above 1200 very soon. Maybe even back above 1300, because if those of you who have been here a while will remember that I was above 1300 for a few months, and I was enjoying it there. It was tough to get any higher, but I was staying above 1300. Well, now I'm below 1200. But anyway, thank you for spending your time here. I'll see you next time.